Ta-da! Cool. Awesome. So just to make sure, you guys are all here to talk about networking at conferences. Am I right? Okay, good. So just a little bit of background. Oh, am I being taped? I'm being taped. Yes? Okay, cool. Then I'm not going to say certain things that I wanted to say. So, yeah, welcome. Super happy you guys are here. We're already at, I would say, 3/4 of the event, but I hope that you might still be able to use the tips and tricks and insights that you're going to get from me in the next 45 minutes until the event still lasts, and hopefully some of you guys are going to go to the after party and still be able to use that wisdom there. My name is Vlad Micu. I'm currently a consultant on the topics of business development and marketing. I help small to mid-size game developers with these issues, and I'm also a free agent in the industry, meaning that I help out anybody who approaches me. I have a very simple rule: if I believe in you or your product, I will be your biggest champion to the extent that I can. And if people manage to lock me up in their cellars or convince me to work with them for more time, then I will usually take them up as a client as well. This is an interesting talk because I was actually asked last minute to jump in and replace someone, another speaker that canceled, and I was asked to talk about networking at conferences, which is an interesting topic on its own because you did the first thing right, which is actually being here. So congratulations on that. But of course, at the same time, we most likely have put a certain investment into being here: financial investment in time, resources, and you of course want to walk away from this event with a feeling that you actually benefited from. You got the return of that investment in the process. You met the people you wanted to meet. You've talked to the people that you might have an interest in, and you got potential business opportunities out of it as well. So this is an interesting talk. I'm quite the nostalgic person, I have to say, and so this is a presentation, and that's also why the talk was titled the way it was in the program. That this was a presentation I gave to students in Finland in 2011. Now, back then, I was just in the industry myself for a couple of years. I've been in the business for 12 years, and I advised them on networking at conferences based on those early 4 to 5 years of my own personal experience doing this. And it's interesting. I thought it was going to be interesting for us to have a look down memory lane, see what I advised those young developers back then, which I'm very happy to say some of them work at Supercell now. Others are running their own companies in Finland. Some of them went abroad. They work at companies like Ubisoft. So I'm very proud of the people that were sitting in that room at that time when I gave this talk. And if you look at my YouTube channel, you'll see the talk that I gave back then in a slightly fitter version of me, younger and fitter version of me. So I started the talk with a simple test. And I technically don't have to give that test to you because you technically already passed. You're here. But as we all know, going to conferences is not a cheap thing. It requires an investment of money, time, and effort. And so back then, the students in the class that I was lecturing had the privilege of going to Nordic Game, which is a conference that's actually happening starting tomorrow in Malmö, Sweden. And their school had subsidized them to go for 100 euros, about 300 zloty, right? All inclusive, flight, hotel, pass. You know how many people went from the 75 people that were in that room? Give me a guess. 10. And I was upset. Right? So I gave them that test. I'm like, what was the last time you bought a new game? When was the last time you paid for lunch at the school canteen instead of packing your own? And when was the last time you bought beer and cigarettes, which in Finland, I might note, are not as cheap as here in Poland. And I told them, do some math. Look at the amount that you spent in the last couple of months, and then try to convince me that you couldn't afford to go to that event for that small symbolic amount of money, because you actually got the financial support from both your educational institute and the powers that that be. And I actually upset some people. Some people actually complained to the teachers that invited me to speak about me offending them because of this. Once again, you guys are here, but people might be watching on YouTube. But that was a quick test. It's like, what are you willing to sacrifice in order to make sure that you are surrounded by your peers in this industry, by the people that might become your best friends, might become your business partners, might fund your passion eventually down the road. And like I said, that's also part of why I like looking back at this presentation. I haven't changed anything, which might explain why it looks so crappy in the last 7 years, because the people that I met back then in the industry were young folks, just like I was, just like you guys are now. But in the span of 7 years, they have acquired very powerful positions in the business, very influential positions. They've become very successful. And these are people that are now part of my network, people that get stuff done for me if I need their help, and people that I stick out my neck for as well if they need anything. Right? These relationships stick with you. Networking is very important. I would say it's the most important thing that we can do in this business, aside from just making an awesome game. So, I tested that, how much was it? And of course I gave them quite the lecture on why they didn't go. So, preparing for conference was the talk. You don't have to wear a suit to be taken seriously. I sure am not wearing a suit right now, although I'm representing one of the developers I work with. And, I had a very simple table of contents. I had, back then I used to add a lot of articles to the back of the slide. You can find these slides on my SlideShare. I don't think I had a SlideShare back then, or maybe it's mentioned at the very end because I wasn't smart enough to mention it at the start of my talk back then, so people didn't have to take notes. So that's a tip, like you don't have to take notes. I can give you the link to the resources that I mentioned in here if you want. So back then, that was me back then. I was a freelance journalist back at that day, doing a lot of industry journalism, writing about the game developers in the industry. I had my own little website, VGvisionary.com, which was a blog back then where I posted interviews with game developers that I did. I also got my first job with GameSauce, which is was a magazine that was started by Casual Connect, which is also a conference, international game conference. And I was also a freelance journalist, so I wrote for a variety of both Dutch and international outlets on video games. I was working on one of the first games I'd ever worked on, which was a small prototype called Snobbly Run. It didn't end up happening, working out, but it was a great experience. And I had Brandon, who inspired me to structure my presentation about myself like this. I was talking about conferences, right? Which conferences are important? Now, you might have noticed I only mentioned 3 on this slide. There's a ton of them now. One for every single country, one for every single state sometimes if we're talking about the United States. There's so many events, right? So it's not just about, oh, I need to go to events. It's also about which events do I go to. Now, you guys are lucky here in Poland. I think Poland, for me personally, is one of the 2 main, I believe, strongest game developer communities that Europe has, next to the Finnish one. So Finland and Poland are 2 of my favorite game dev scenes as of right now. There's a reason I try to come here every 2 to 3 months, and there's a reason I go there every 2 to 3 months. And I was very pleased to hear that you guys are right now having everyone compete for talent, which means that for foreign developers, it actually is interesting to come to Poland now as well, which is also beneficial for you guys because you have this cultural exchange and you get this knowledge from outside on your doorstep. But getting to conferences has always been a challenge for everybody. And, there's the obvious way of volunteering. I'm very happy to see that, there's a great group of volunteers helping out here at Digital Dragons as well. I used to bluff my way in as press. I think now with YouTube and Twitch streaming being a very popular thing to do, a lot of people have been trying to get themselves in that way. I know a lot of developers who also stream on the side. I think that's great. Speaking, right? Never underestimate the power of your message, right? If you have a great story, it never hurts to apply. You might not be accepted at first, but even the process of applying a presentation means that you're practicing that application, right? A lot of people, for example, test their talks at smaller events to then apply them for the Game Developers Conference, which is the biggest conference in San Francisco every year in March, right? Enter a competition or the showcase, right? We got how many games being showcased here now? Like 40 or 50? There you go. Yeah, quite a lot. So those people, of course, found a way in. Getting a booth, if you're fortunate enough to work at Techland or a big company that is hiring, you suddenly pay, you shell money and you get a booth. Or you just pay. You save the money, like I said. You try to control yourself from your vices. You try not to, consume too many beers and whatnot, even though it's pretty cheap here in Poland. And you plan ahead. Okay, Digital Dragons is coming in May. I'm going to start saving money in December, and I'm going to build up to get myself that ticket. Even though I'm the first one to say try to earn your ticket instead of paying for it, I'm happy to say can still count the amount of conferences that I've paid a ticket for on my hand and feet, but that's also because I used to be press. So I always had a rule, like I either volunteer, I either write about the event for a media outlet, or I speak. And that's been working out quite well for me. I've saved a lot of money on events as a result. But in the end, it just comes down to the same thing. Like, that hasn't changed. You're investing in yourself and your network. Your network is really important. The people who you surround yourself with on a daily basis are the people who define you. So think about the 5 people you spend most time with in your life. Whether you like it or not, those people are who you are, right? So I was, talking to students back then. And I was telling, like, why would you at least have to try those 3 different options, volunteering, writing, and talking, at least once? And so, I wanted to refer to myself. So my story is very simple. I was the fat kid in high school. I was the nerd. And video games were an escape for me. I was addicted to video games. I'm happy to admit that. I played Battlefield 1942, Counter-Strike, those kind of things, 8 to 10 hours a day. I was fortunate enough to have a good mind, so I finished my homework pretty early, or I was done with my homework even before going home, and managed to have the time. My parents were not happy, but that's a different story. So I gradually managed to turn that passion into a source of income, into a career. I'll never forget that first moment when I came to my parents, to my father, with a paycheck that was bigger than his. He's an opera singer. He makes a good living, but still, my check was bigger. And then they started complaining that I was traveling too much and they never saw me. So it was never perfect. Like, you never win. But I found some amazing opportunities on the way. I traveled a lot. I found opportunities to go to different events all over the world. That's a picture from QuakeCon in Texas, right? Now run by Bethesda. Back then it was id Software doing that event. Gamescom, or no, this was Leipzig Game Convention. This was before Gamescom. Me interviewing Hank Kiersey, one of the main military advisors on Call of Duty. Ed Boon, you might know him as one of the creators of Mortal Kombat. Me interviewing him at E3. So I just grabbed every single opportunity I had. Every single opportunity. Volunteering, same thing. This is me with the original crew of the first ever game conference in the Netherlands, the NLGD Festival of Games, back in 2006. Ansgar, the only gentleman in black on the picture, got an email from me when I was just starting my studies in the Netherlands, and was happy to welcome me on board as part of the organization team 2 months before the event started. And I spent 1 or 2 days every week at their office planning and executing. And in 2 days of the event itself, I met the 250 people that were our game industry back then, right? So I met everybody, and I still know those people. But being behind the scenes, I don't know, it just adds some kind of value to being at events, which is why I like to contribute, which is why I like to be involved, which is why I like to connect people when I'm at different events. Press. This is my good buddy Chris. Chris is a brother from another mother for me. We've known each other for 10 years now. When I first met him in 2009, it was at GDC in San Francisco, and he was covering the event. He got a press pass on behalf of a small gaming website. And I instantly noticed that he was hungry, he had an appetite for meeting people, and I'll never forget that we were actually in the W Hotel, which is a famous place to just end your night and smoke a cigarette and hang out with tall, big shot developers that actually could afford to be in that hotel and have a room there. And we saw Cliffy B walk by, and we were both like, oh, that's Cliffy B, he's super cool, Gears of War, blah, blah, blah. So I've been using this quote from Chris ever since then. I guess if nothing else, being part of Gaming Press has allowed me to draw from a nearly unlimited well of knowledge and inspiration that I may have I may have otherwise never had access to, because he also took the opportunity of interviewing people. So Chris did an internship at Blizzard. He was working at Microsoft briefly. He actually then worked on at Bosky with Cliff, and recently moved to Blizzard, which was his dream job. He's now a game designer at Blizzard. Great for him, right? But yeah, like when you're young, when you don't really have a lot to show, it really just comes down to your personality, sticking out from the masses. And you'll have to bluff it a little bit till you make it. This is me and my good buddy JW and Jonathan, also known as Cactus, the creator of Hotline Miami, at the GDC Awards in 2010. I managed to, because I was press, managed to get a wristband and sit at their table. JW, of course, known from Flambeer fame, Nuclear Throne, Luftrausers, those things. Good friends of mine back then. And so we met a lot of people at that award show, because everyone who was nominated was there, and there was like an international cast of developer talent. So preparing for a conference is I think, something that a lot of people underestimate. Just having the right gear. Who brought business cards? All right, who didn't bring business cards? All right, I don't get you. Like you pay so much money to come here. You might either you like to not waste business cards and you have some other trinket, that quickly adds people on LinkedIn or whatnot. But I hate wasting paper, but I always carry a business card around. Like if you've seen American Psycho, the movie, you need to watch that movie to understand the value of a business card. Anyways, business cards, essential. And it's fine if you don't have one. Always ask for one if you meet someone that's important. I always say, when I give my business card to someone important and they don't have one, I'm like, no worries. As long as there's someone on the receiving end, I'm sure that I'm going to meet that person. But the first thing I do is I remember their name, or I write down their name, go to LinkedIn, and add them. So I don't have to rely on the business card to connect with that very important person. Accommodation. I mean, you guys are here once again. Accommodation is a super important thing. I can't stress enough about planning this stuff ahead, right? When I go to GDC, which is in March, I book my accommodation in October. When I go to Gamescom, which is in August in Cologne, I book my accommodation in January. When there's GDC, there's this indie hostel, which is Downtown Hostling International. It just fills up, because everyone is there. That's why it's called the indie hostel. All the indies you've ever wanted to meet are always in the same freaking square, hundreds of meters in the same building. Great way to meet people, hang out. I mean, Vera, you've been in the hostel, I think, so she knows. You can ask her more about that. And yeah, like I said, the basics, right? Business cards. Resume, same thing, right? Like, who's an artist? Any artists? So what I love to tell artists is, when you have a portfolio, just have it on your mobile. Don't stream stuff. Don't try to rely on the Wi-Fi at an event. Have the stuff preloaded on your phone. If you have a game, have the trailer preloaded. If you have artwork, have it preloaded. I was really happy to see a lot of artists showcasing stuff downstairs, having it already presentable, and so forth. Comfortable clothing. Honestly, I am not a suit guy. I love my suits. I'm a bit overweight right now, so I don't fit in most of them that I have. But comfort is everything. I have custom phototherapeutic soles that were 3D printed for me. They're 100 euros, around 300 zloty. But I go to 30 to 40 events every year. I walk at least 15,000 to 20,000 steps a day, according to my Fitbit. Right? Comfort is everything. Elevator pitch, right? Imagine you walk into an elevator and there's that exact person you've been wanting to talk to all day. Can you tell that person in 30 seconds why you're interesting and why you should make sure to connect, right? It's like, hey, my name is Vlad Micu. I consult small to mid-size game developers. I pretty much save them time, money, and I tell them what they don't want to hear. And I make money with that. That's me. That's my elevator pitch. And I connect people, so I know a lot of people. Demos, portfolios, trailers, have them on your devices. And sleep. Sleep is like essential. There's a lot of people that just go out the first night. They stay up till 5. It's a marathon, not a race. And of course, don't forget your toothbrush. Right? These things have not changed in the last 7 years. I think The game industry is one of the most accepting places. This also hasn't changed. I think this has only become better over the years. Just be who you are. Self-love, I think, is a very important thing. There's been a lot of issues coming up nowadays in the industry about mental health, right? We were dealing with that issue. People see that as a weakness. I've had mental health issues myself, and I've been public about them in many of my talks. Suicide attempts, depression, all of that kind of thing. And you know, we're in an interesting area. We're in Eastern Europe. In Eastern Europe, these kind of things are still seen as a weakness. Hopefully, through the internationalization of our developer community, with more foreigners coming in, this can be a much more acceptable thing. But what I'm trying to say here is, love yourself, be yourself, and that's what's going to get you the things you want in life. Very simple. You know, true heroes don't always have to wear costumes. That's why I love this meme. This is this kind of goes against what you guys are doing right now, but then again, this talk should have been scheduled at the very first time slot of this conference. Don't go camping. So I love how good the quality of the talks are at events like this, but then again, the real adventure is out there. The real adventure is in the evenings with the parties and the socializing, right? Conferences are not just about talks, and even if you are in a talk like this one, look to your left, look to your right, unless you sat somewhere in one row where no one else is, and say hi to the people next to you, because those people in 10 years from now are going to be nominated for awards, just like you guys are going to be raising money, are going to be making their sequel to their successful titles. So the people that you're next with right now, those people matter the most, right? Because you all are here for the same reasons, which means you might see each other again next time. Do your research, right? Like, once again, it comes down to planning. Like, okay, who are the speakers? Who do I want to meet? Who do they know? Right now, for some of my clients, I actually make folders with pictures of all the important people that are going to events with their names and their companies, so that they can just very quickly load that up on their phone and be like, is that the, okay, that's the guy, right? Why? Well, time flies at these kind of events, right? We've been here for 2 days. It's almost over. Like, you know, shit, I only have, how much time? I started at, when did I start? All right, so I still have 25? I got 20 minutes, oh, 15 then. Right, so time flies by. So planning meetings is also something important. For next time, if you have someone you really, really want to talk to, don't rely just on the meeting application. I love meeting applications, but if you don't have any social capital with the person you want to meet, it's going to be very easy for that person to be like, oh, I feel like crap, oh, I drank too much, blah, 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 blah. Oh, I'm going to cancel this guy. And there goes your meeting. So what I do for my clients is I email, if I have the contacts, I email the people they want to meet ahead of time, or I reach out to friends of mine that might know those people. I connect with them ahead of time, then I tell them, hey, let's set up something in the meeting app. And even better, if they're free, if their schedule is open, I try to have an introductory Skype call before even meeting them in person, so that when we actually sit down in the same room with a beer in our hands, thanks to the beautiful exhibitors downstairs giving away beer to everybody, we can actually talk about the things that matter. Don't waste your time. When you go to an event to the other side of the world, you'll be jet lagged. The moment someone sits down to meet with you and it's a big event, they might already have in the back of their heads, oh, there's a more important event that I need, a more important meeting that I need to go to after this, which means that that they're completely distracted. They won't even think about you, right? So you want that time to be valuable. And sometimes, you know, they're jet lagged, their voice is gone, just like mine is right now, and they won't care. They won't care because you don't have a social relationship with them, or at least capital. Make a posse, right? Like, talk to your peers, talk to your friends, tell them, this is what I'm looking for, this is what I have to offer, very simple. And then keep that in the back of your heads. Right now, I have, I would say, at least 100 people that I think of in the back of my head when I meet people like you. It's like, oh, you publish games. What kind of games? Oh, Match 3. Okay, I know this guy in Poland. He's making Match 3 games. I'll connect you, right? I might not have a value in that person, but that person might know someone who's valuable for me. but I can at least give them something because I'm thinking for other people. Working on these things together just makes these events more fruitful. And stay flexible. Don't lock yourself down. I hate back-to-back, right? Which means that you have a meeting, then you have the next one, then you have the next one. You miss out on all the awesome opportunities. If I would have had back-to-back meetings now here at this event, I wouldn't have met someone from Discord. I wouldn't have met Brandon Green, who's walking around here, who made PUBG. He's walking around. You got to know what he looks like. And I bumped into him a few weeks ago, so that's great. So I know how he looks like. But if you're like at the same table, you will miss more than you will gain as well. So it's trying to find that fine balance. Like I said, this hasn't changed a lot either. Just talking to random people. I mean, of course you're focused, but I've made it a skill. I've made it an art to spot badges. So I've actually become a fan of big badges. Now I love this badge. I love the size, but the typing is so small. Why isn't it not like this? So, if I have good eyesight, I can actually, it starts with a P, right? So, but I've become really good at spotting badges. Also, like having a conversation and using my peripheral vision or distracting people so they don't see I need to watch their badge. Because there's a lot of people that come up to me and say like, hey, Vlad, and I'm like, hey, thingy, I don't know who you are anymore. But I'm also honest about that. I'm like, I'm sorry. What was your name again? I'm sure we met somewhere. Just try to remind me because I just meet a lot of people. I just don't want to be a dick about it. So learn to spot badges. Approach random people. Like I said, say hi to the person next to you right now, like left and right, because these people might be valuable as well. Don't be insecure about it. Like believe in yourself, because everyone's been in your shoes. Like there's a lot of people who are like successful and they're millionaires in the industry. And there's one very simple rule: no one knows what they're doing. Period. You might think they do, but they don't. Let me just get my water out. Oh. See, I have so many events. I actually have a special clip to attach my bottle to my man purse. But here's the other thing, right? The odds that random people you bump into might know the person you're looking for are incredibly high. We might think this industry is big, but it's not. It's still very small. So finding the conference tip. Every single conference I go to, there's a moment when I'm just like, why am I here? What am I doing? I want to go home. Screw this, I'm done. You might feel overwhelmed. There's too many people around you. Too many people you want to meet. Too many good talks you want to go to. Oh God, they're overlapping. Well, luckily, everything's being recorded. You might feel lonely. Right? Through my travels, I've learned that there's a very big, I've had to learn very hard that there's a very big difference between being lonely and being alone. I'm very often alone in hotel rooms, on the road, but you're not alone. You don't have to feel lonely. There's always someone to talk to at these events, and you're definitely not going to be the only one feeling that. You're going to miss out on a lot of things. You're going to miss out on a lot of important people. You're going to miss out on talks. You're going to miss out on stuff. They might be giving out free iPads in the next room. You wouldn't know. You'd be like, damn it, that Vlad, he stopped me from getting my free iPad. I've had that a couple of times. You might, mistreat yourself a little. Not sleeping enough, not eating well. But remember, there's always another day, right? And no one stops you from going back to your hotel, taking a 1 hour, 2 hour break, coming back here refreshed. We all do it. We all do it. And in case you have a booth, oh my God, that's a whole different topic. God damn, like having a booth at events, I'm just gonna keep it simple. Don't come alone. I've ran booths at events on my own. It's killer. It's bad. So there's a lot of articles online by game developers about how to effectively run a booth. I even at one point needed a screen, and I was fortunate enough to be in an Airbnb. Oh wait, this is being recorded. Let's just say that I found a screen and then we used it and nothing happened, and it was put back on the same spot where we found it. Be smart about this stuff, because having a booth is expensive. It's just a lot of resources, a lot of time. One of the things that I've been preaching to a lot of people, especially when you go to bigger events like GDC that are just massive, 30,000, 40,000 developers on a couple of square miles, is be the booth, right? Like I am right now. It's like, represent yourself, show your game, have business cards, have a phone with a trailer, be the booth, be the game. Quick break. This book was 70 years when they took that release, but it's about 100 years old now. Dale Carnegie, famous author. Very cheesy American title, How to Win Friends and Influence People. The simple rule that Dale Carnegie writes in that book is show interest in others. Don't talk about yourself. Ask questions. What do you like? What have you done? What are your hobbies? Very simple things. But this is how you build relationships with people. Check it out. There's an audiobook on YouTube as well, because it's like so old it's free now. Do's and don'ts. I have a lot of those. Time your introductions. Through my personal development and through my career in the industry, I've spent a lot of time looking at body language, and I like looking at people, trying to understand what's going on from a distance. And there's this very simple example of like when you see two important people talk, and their feet are directly aimed at each other. You kind of can see that there's kind of like a barrier in there, that they're talking about something rather important. That's not the time you want to go and interrupt. They might be talking about closing a deal or something like that. But sometimes people are facing each other, but they're like a bit more open, like this, like some third person could join in. And it's those little kind of signs that eventually you'll get sensitive to and realize like, oh, this is my time, this is my moment to go say hi. Another thing I love doing, especially if you have a business meeting area like this, when someone is waiting because their meeting is late, that's my invitation to go in and say hi. It's like, oh, hey, I guess your meeting isn't here yet. Well, I might as well say hi, Vlad. Well, if he shows up, I'll just get out of your way. And then the other meeting comes like, hey, don't worry about it. I kept him warm. You guys can have your meeting. Oh, by the way, nice to meet you, Vlad. I'll talk to you guys later. No worries. Right? But it's just a very simple moment when someone else has nothing better to do that you can jump into. But always be polite. Excuse me, I hope I'm not bothering. Am I bothering you guys? Is it okay if I say hi? Just want to briefly say something. I'm going to give you a good example. There was someone I really wanted to say hi to who was staying at the same hotel as me this morning. And I knew that he was working. He was on his laptop. So one of the tricks that I use, well, tricks, it's a technique, is time limit. So what I did is I went and got my breakfast first. I put it down at a different table. And I went up to that person, I'm like, hey, nice to see you. I'm glad you're here. I didn't know. Let's catch up later. So I need to go get my breakfast because it's getting cold. And that also relieves them of the tension of like, oh no, this guy's going to talk my head up for the next 5 to 10 minutes and I won't be able to send that email, right? So you kind of remove yourself. You already kind of, from the beginning state, listen, I'm just going to take 5 or 10 of your seconds of your time. Don't worry. I'm not going to clang on to you like some kind of parasite, right? Some developers do that. So like I said, find a legitimate excuse to approach someone. Don't act like a fanboy. I sometimes do act like a fanboy, but there's like it's a timing issue, right? Once again, it's like I generally do not approach developers right after they give their talk anymore, because I'm going to be one of the 10 or dozen or 20 people that are going to do that. But I usually try to talk to them maybe even 30 minutes before talk, like when they walk in and when they're still relaxed, or even better, when they're waiting for the other speaker to still finish, because they can't do anything, they can't set up, right? But then of course make sure that it doesn't happen by you interrupting the other speaker that's still talking. So it's just really trying to find just see it as a game, see it as a stealth game. Like, when can I approach this guy without offending him? I once stopped Phil Spector, the creator of Deus Ex and Epic Mickey, from going to the bathroom. And he told me, he's like, I'm sorry, I really need to go to the bathroom. I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. But the cool thing is I met Phil a couple of years later, and he accidentally took my chair at an award show. But he remembered me, so I'm like, okay, now we're even. So I turned that into a positive, so that was funny. That guy's awesome. So don't take it personal. When I lived in LA, I got to talk to a lot of people that thought they were really important, and I would talk to them and show interest in them, and within 30 seconds they would just walk away from me, and I'll be like, what the hell just happened here? Like, why did that person just walk away? But some people they just talk to so many people, they just meet so many people that they just don't even have the energy to tell you. So don't take that stuff personal. That's something that hasn't changed. I still see a lot of people do this. It happens to me a lot as well. I'm like, no worries, no worries. It's all good. Go ahead, do your thing. But it kind of comes back to that initial thing I mentioned, is like, be prepared for the fact that those people might be going somewhere, right? And at the same time, some people are just jerks. They're just arrogant bastards. That's not your fault, right? And if you talk to other people and you're like, well, there was something weird, and they say, well, don't worry, that's him, he's a dick. Okay, then it's not you. It's never you. It just happens. Big game conventions. This hasn't changed either. If you go to a big event, let's say E3, right? Why not? It is expensive, though. I mean, you got to go to the U.S., hotels in downtown L.A., and so forth and so forth. But there's a lot to gain. Now, these kind of things, the things that I mentioned here, have kind of changed. But there are, I would say, other events that are still interesting. Gamescom is a good example. I haven't missed a Gamescom since 2009 when it started. This is going to be my 10th. John Graham here mentioned this about E3. And this kind of also applies to Digital Dragons, I have to say, a little bit for me. Now, John back then was at Wolfire. He's now the CEO of Humble Bundle. But he blogged a lot back then. This is, I think, 2010. And this is a quote from one of his blogs where he said, while waiting in line just to get into E3, right? Like just to get my badge, you may find yourself standing next to the principal engine programmer for the Halo team. Anyone you see holding a fancy-looking camera is probably affiliated with a major gaming news site. So go say hi. I stalked as many as possible. Any after parties you can find are networking bonus rounds as well. So it's great, right? Everyone's wearing their company T-shirt. So it's really easy to spot, oh, that guy's from Techland, that guy's from CD Projekt, that guy's from Microsoft, whatnot, right? Infinity Ward. So just go say hi, especially when people are in positions where they're not going anywhere. So I love networking while waiting in line. We had that badge pickup party. I just went down the line back and forth, like, hey, how you doing? Hey, nice to see you. Hey, they couldn't run away anyways because they were stuck, right? They were trapped. So this is actually funny timing because the talk that I gave was exactly 7 years ago. I would say, no, 8 years even, back in 2011. So I was also talking about preparing for Gamescom, which is coming up in August. So that's great timing, right? So who here has any remote interest in going to Gamescom either for themselves or for business? Oh wow, that's actually quite a lot of people. Awesome. It actually comes down to the same thing. Do your research. The Meet to Match app that is being used by a lot of people during Gamescom is open. The first people that are now registered and available to set up meetings with are the publishers because they got the invite first. And me too, but that's a different story. Make a list of goals, right? Plan this stuff. Who do I want to meet? Who is priority number one? How do I get there? Da-da-da-da-da. Find your golden ticket, right? How do I get in? Do I have a friend who has a booth? Does he have any exhibitor passes left? How much is an exhibitor pass? Do I have my hotel yet? Can I stay with friends? Is someone getting an Airbnb? And so forth. I've been staying with the same family for the last 7 years that have apartments or in their house they have studios for seasonal workers. So have a posse, never go alone. Keep networking, bring your business cards. You'll fight that conference dip. Just take a breather, go back to your hotel, relax. Have fun, most importantly. And yeah, avoid becoming socially awkward pegging, which is now a totally dead meme, but back then was really popular. So some articles that I posted here. My contact info hasn't changed in the last decade either, except for the fact that this doesn't apply because that was in Finland. I was in a guest lecture house. I had a big party with a lot of alcohol, after I gave this talk. I introduced beer pong to the local students, which they play till this day. So I was the father of beer pong for that university. And yeah, if you have any questions, I'm very unactive on Twitter, but you can always email me. And then if you take my company name, which is like VG Visionary, you go to slideshare.net/VG Visionary, and you'll find all of my talks and the slides from those talks. So yeah, I think we ran out of time. If people do have questions, I'll be outside for a little bit. I have to then go straight to the airport, so I won't be here long. But thank you for your time. I hope that some of this might still be useful for you in the final hours of this conference. And I hope to see you guys at the next big thing. So thank you very much.